Before this story begins, I want you to answer one thing in the comments. If you heard footsteps in your basement right now, would you go down to check? Because tonight, you'll hear true basement encounters where people did exactly that, and barely made it out alive. Stay till the end, because each part gets darker than the last. I had been living in my first house for less than a year when this happened. I was in my early 20s, fresh out of college, proud to finally have a place of my own. The house itself was normal, but the basement was strange. It had been divided into several small sections with plywood walls and exposed wooden frames. From the stairs, you couldn't see the whole space at once. It felt like a maze. I only went down there to do laundry or grab something from storage. One evening after work, I carried a basket of clothes downstairs. The basement lights were already on, which struck me as odd. I didn't remember turning them on earlier, but I assumed I had forgotten. The lighting down there was weak and yellow, barely pushing back the shadows. I stepped off the last stair and started walking toward the washing machine when I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. I turned my head and froze. A man was crouched behind a folding table near the far wall, staring straight at me. He looked dirty, like he hadn't washed in weeks. His hair was tangled, his clothes torn and dark with stains. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. There was a stranger hiding inside my basement. For a second, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other in silence. Then he stood up suddenly and ran deeper into the basement, disappearing into the narrow rooms at the back. That snapped me out of my shock. I turned to run back up the stairs, but before I could reach them, every light went out at once. The basement became pitch black. I couldn't see my own hands. I tried moving anyway, assuming I knew the layout. I didn't. My foot caught on something, and I fell hard onto the concrete floor. Panic took over. I screamed into the darkness, hoping it would scare him away. Instead, I heard screaming back. It wasn't a normal scream. It sounded angry, wild, like someone pretending to be human. I stopped screaming. So did he. I forced myself to crawl along the wall, using my hands to feel where I was going. Somewhere behind me, I heard footsteps and heavy breathing. It felt like he was following the sound of my fear. When I finally reached the stairs, I grabbed the railing and tried to climb, but something grabbed my ankle and yanked me down. My head hit the railing, and I felt myself being dragged away from the stairs with terrifying strength. I kicked blindly until my foot struck something solid. The grip loosened. I twisted free and crawled back toward the stairs, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I made it upstairs and slammed the door shut, pressing my body against it. Seconds later, something slammed into the door from below. Again. And again. Eventually, it stopped. When the police arrived, they found a basement window forced open. They believed the man had been secretly living there. He even knew where the light switch was. I moved out 4 months later, because I truly believe that man didn't just want to hide. He was waiting. But that wasn't the only time someone was hiding in the basement. In part 2, a teenager records a video in the dark and sees something standing inside his house. I was 14 when this happened, and I'm in my 30s now, but the memory still feels sharp. My parents had gone out of state for a wedding and didn't want to leave me alone, so the plan was for my older sister to stay with me. As soon as they left, she texted and said she had plans with friends and wasn't coming. I didn't tell my parents. I wanted the weekend to myself. The house was in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by families. I felt safe. I spent the evening playing video games and watching TV. Nothing felt strange until just after midnight. I heard a soft tapping noise outside, like something brushing against the wall. At first, I thought it was a tree branch or maybe an animal. A few minutes later, the sound came again, but this time it seemed to move along the side of the house. That made my stomach tighten. It didn't sound random anymore. I muted the TV and sat still, listening. After a minute of silence, I convinced myself I was overreacting and turned the volume back up. About 20 minutes later, I heard another tapping sound, but now it was coming from below me, from the basement. The living room sat directly above it. Our basement wasn't finished, but it had a small kitchenette and several windows near the ground outside. I told myself it had to be a raccoon or a stray cat hitting one of the windows. I walked to the basement door and opened it just enough to look down the stairs. It was dark. The tapping continued every few seconds. Without thinking, I called out, "Hello?" The tapping stopped instantly. That scared me more than the noise itself. The light switch was at the bottom of the stairs, and I refused to go down there. Instead, I cracked the door open just enough to slip my arm through and pointed my phone camera toward where I knew the window was. I turned the flash on and recorded for a few seconds with my eyes closed. Then I slammed the door shut and locked it. When I watched the video, my chest went cold. There was a person standing inside the basement, right under the window. I ran to my room, locked the door, and called my dad. While I was on the phone, I heard heavy banging on the basement door. Someone was trying to get upstairs. The police arrived soon after. By then, the noise had stopped. They searched the basement and the yard, but whoever it was had escaped through one of the windows. Several items were missing from storage. What terrified me most was what the officers found near the kitchenette. The largest knife from the rack was gone. If I hadn't recorded that video, I don't think anyone would have believed me. Even now, I don't know what that person planned to do if they had made it upstairs. But the next story is even worse. Because the person hiding in that basement wasn't outside trying to get in. They were already inside the house the entire time. This happened when I was 16, and yeah, it still messes with my head. My parents' basement was basically my hangout spot. Big couch, decent TV, and a couple of storage rooms in the back. My parents never used it, so it felt like my own little cave. We also had a cat named Rocky. Dude was super clingy. Every night, my parents locked him in the basement so he wouldn't wake them up. That's important. One Friday night, I had my girlfriend over. My parents were asleep upstairs, and we were chilling on the couch pretending to watch TV. That's when we heard a faint rustling sound coming from one of the storage rooms. I laughed it off. "Relax, it's just my cat," I told her. She didn't look convinced, but the noise sounded exactly like a cat climbing on boxes, so I stayed cool. Every few minutes, there'd be another soft thud or shuffle. She kept giving me that something's wrong look, and I kept saying, "It's Rocky. He's always wild at night." Then we heard scratching at the door at the top of the basement stairs. That's when my blood ran cold. That was Rocky's scratch, which meant he wasn't down there with us. I didn't say anything right away because I didn't want to freak her out. I was trying to convince myself I was wrong. But then she suddenly grabbed my arm and screamed. I turned around just in time to see a foam football roll out from the dark storage room and stop near the couch. It didn't fall. It didn't slide. It was thrown. There was someone back there. Someone who had been listening to us talk. Someone who had been hiding while I kept saying, "It's just my cat." I didn't think. I grabbed her and ran for the stairs. We slammed the basement door shut and locked it, making sure Rocky stayed upstairs. She was crying. I was shaking so bad I could barely breathe. My parents woke up, and within minutes, The cops were there. They searched the basement, the storage rooms, and even the garage. Nothing. No broken windows. No forced doors. No sign of anyone hiding. One officer said the person probably ran out through the garage before they arrived. But I don't buy that. I was standing on the back deck the whole time, staring straight at the garage door. Nobody came out. Not a soul. To this day, my parents think the intruder slipped away and I just didn't see it. But I know what I saw. I know that football didn't move on its own. Someone was down there with us. And somehow, they vanished. And if you think that was creepy, the next story is way worse. Because in part 4, the voice in the basement didn't belong to a stranger. It sounded exactly like his mother. I was around 9 years old when this happened, and even now, it still feels messed up when I think about it. Our basement was where all the video game stuff was. Old TV, console, couch, the whole setup. I hated the basement at night. But I loved games more than I feared the dark, so I'd sneak down there on weekends and play until I couldn't keep my eyes open. The scariest part of the basement was the laundry and boiler room. No windows. Ever. It stayed pitch black no matter what time of day it was. And it always made weird noises, pipes clicking, machines humming, stuff like that. Normally, I ignored it. But one night, while I was playing, I heard the laundry room door slowly creak open. I froze with the controller in my hands. Then I heard a woman's voice. Not screaming, not talking, just groaning. Soft, low, and it sounded exactly like my mom. I actually laughed a little and said something dumb like, "Nice try, Mom," thinking she was trying to scare me. My mom was never the prank type, but in my head, that was the only thing that made sense. So I stood up and walked toward the laundry room. As I got closer, the sound stopped. The doorway was open just enough to see inside. The room was pure black, no light at all. Then I noticed a shape standing in there. A person, just barely visible. "Mom," I said again, but my voice came out weak. The shape didn't move. That's when my stomach dropped. I knew it wasn't her. I bolted up the stairs like my life depended on it and ran into the living room. My parents were sitting on the couch watching TV. "There's a woman in the basement." I yelled. They looked at each other and ran downstairs without even grabbing a phone. They slammed the basement door behind them and told me to stay upstairs. I sat there shaking, listening to nothing but silence. After a long time, my mom came back up and told me it was just a prank. She said one of her friends had come over and tried to scare me. I didn't really believe it, but I was a kid, so I went to bed. Years later, I started thinking about it again. Something didn't sit right. I searched my family history online and found out my mom had a sister named Debbie. I had never met her. She was dead. When I showed my parents, they finally told me the truth. Debbie had serious mental problems and had hurt people before. They said she wasn't supposed to be near me, ever. They claimed she must have snuck into the house without them knowing that night. They never explained why she was in the basement. They never explained how long she had been there. And every time I asked after that, they shut the conversation down. But what if these weren't just random intruders? What if basement attracts something darker? In Part 5, we look at what all these stories have in common, and why the basement is the worst place in any house. After hearing all these stories, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just bad luck. There's a pattern. Basements aren't just creepy because they are dark. They are dangerous because people assume nothing is down there. Think about it. Basements are quiet, cold, usually empty. Most people only go down for laundry or storage. That means hours, sometimes days, go by without anyone checking them. If someone wanted a place to hide, crash for a while, or watch a house without being noticed, a basement would be perfect. In the first story, the man didn't just break in. He knew the layout. He knew where the light switch was. That means he'd been down there before, probably for a long time. In the second story, the guy was already inside the basement before trying to get upstairs. He didn't smash a door. He waited. That's not random. That's calculated. And in the third story, whoever were hiding in that storage room had time. Time to listen. Time to wait. Time to throw that football at just the right moment. What makes it worse is how basements mess with your head. Down there, your phone's signal drops. Light barely reaches. Every sound echoes. Pipes bang. Wood creaks. Your brain starts filling in blanks. You can't tell if footsteps are real or just a house settling. And when panic hits, your sense of direction goes out the window. Another thing nobody wants to admit, basements feel separate from the house. Upstairs is where life happens. Downstairs feels like a different world. That's why people panic when something is wrong down there. You don't feel like you're in your home anymore. You feel trapped. Cops can't do much either. By the time they show up, whoever was down there usually dips out through a window or side door. No cameras. No witnesses. No proof. Just shaken people trying to explain something that sounds insane. And here's the scariest part. Most of these intruders didn't steal much. They weren't there for TVs or money. They were there for the space, the darkness, the privacy, which raises a worse question. What were they actually planning to do? Because if someone breaks in just to rob you, they are in and out. But if someone hides in your basement, they are waiting for you to come down. Waiting for you to be alone. Waiting for the right moment. Basements don't just hide junk. Sometimes they hide people. And sometimes they hide something that doesn't want to be found. But there's one thing that still doesn't make sense. In every story, the police arrived, and nobody was ever caught. In Part 6, we talk about what the cops never found, and why that might be the most terrifying part of all. In every one of these stories, the police showed up, sirens, flashlights, questions, reports, and in every one of them, nothing, no suspect, no arrest, no real explanation. That's the part that sticks with you. Because when cops can't find anything, your brain tries to fill in the blanks. Maybe the guy ran. Maybe he hid. Maybe he was never there. But deep down, you know something was wrong. You felt it. You saw it. You heard it breathing behind you. The worst part? Basements are crime scene nightmares. Dirt floors. Dust everywhere. Old boxes. Junk piled up in corners. Footprints get wiped out fast. Fingerprints don't stick. And most basements don't have cameras. No one expects to need them. In the first story, the intruder escaped through a window. In the second, he vanished into the night with a knife. In the third, there wasn't even a way out that made sense. And yet, he was gone. Like he dissolved into the walls. That messes with you. Because now it's not just about survival. It's about not knowing. Not knowing who it was. Not knowing why they were there. Not knowing if they'll come back. And here's something cops don't usually say out loud. Sometimes intruders don't leave right away. They wait. They move when the house is loud. They hide when it's quiet. They learn your routine. That's what makes the idea of someone living in your basement so disturbing. Not breaking in, but staying, eating your food, watching your lights turn off, learning when you're alone. It turns your house into a stage, and you into the target. Most people think danger comes from outside, from dark streets or abandoned buildings. But these stories prove something worse. Sometimes danger is already inside your house, under your feet, behind a door you barely think about. And even when the cops leave and the house is clear, the feeling doesn't go away. You start double-checking doors. You leave lights on. You avoid the basement unless you have to. Because once you realize someone could be down there, you can't unthink it. And the scariest part? Every one of these people survived. Barely. If they had slipped, if they had hesitated, if they had gone down one more step, we wouldn't be hearing their stories. We'd be reading about them. So here's the real question. Were these people just hiding, or were they waiting for the right moment? In Part 7, the final part, we answer the most terrifying truth of all. The basement isn't empty, and it never really was. People love to think monsters live in abandoned buildings or deep in the woods. That's movie logic. Real life is worse. Real life says the scariest place might be the room under your feet. Every story you just heard had the same vibe. Someone was already inside the house. Not breaking in loud. Not rushing. Just hiding. Waiting. Learning the layout. Learning the routine. That's what makes basements different from attics or closets. Basements are easy to disappear in. They're dark. They're quiet. They're ignored. Nobody goes down there unless they have to, which means hours can pass without anyone checking. Plenty of time for someone to move. Plenty of time to listen. And think about how basements mess with your head. No windows. Bad lighting. Weird sound from pipes and heaters. Your brain starts playing tricks on you. Was that a footstep or the house settling? Was that breathing or just air moving through a vent? By the time you realize it's something real, you're already in the worst spot possible, underground, boxed in, with only one way out. That's why the people in these stories felt hunted. Not chased. Hunted. A robber wants your stuff. A hunter wants you. And none of these intruders acted rushed. They didn't smash windows and sprint upstairs. They stayed hidden. They turned off lights. They made noise on purpose, like they were testing reactions. That's not random behavior. That's control. After something like that, you don't feel safe in your own house anymore. You start leaving lights on. You avoid going downstairs at night. Laundry turns into a daytime activity. Every little sound makes your heart jump. Because once you accept that someone could be hiding down there, you never fully relax again. And here's the part nobody wants to talk about. Most of these people were lucky. Lucky they screamed. Lucky they ran. Lucky they didn't freeze 1 second longer. If any of them had gone deeper into the basement, if any of them had tried to check it out, these wouldn't be scary stories. They'd be missing person cases. So if you ever hear tapping from below you, if you hear footsteps where no one should be, if the lights are on when you know you turned them off, don't go looking. Because basements don't just store old boxes and broken furniture. Sometimes they store secrets. Sometimes they store people. And sometimes they store something that's been waiting for you to come down. So now I want to ask you, would you go into your basement after hearing these stories? Or would you leave the house? Comment your answer below. And if you want more true horror like this, don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next story might sound exactly like your house.